Hello and welcome to your week ahead tarot forecast reading. I'm going to be talking through the energies of the week ahead by pulling some cards, and I'll offer you a few questions to reflect and journal on throughout the upcoming week. This reading will be for the week of May 30th through June 5th. So we are already almost into June. That is a surprise to me. Time is really going by fast. All right, so I'm going to shuffle a bit, and I'll be pulling one card for each day of the week and offer some questions to think about. All right, so our card for Monday, let's see what we've got. We have the Page of Pentacles. And on this card, we see a figure who's holding a pentacle up and in front of them, kind of looking at it as they're standing on this flat earth. There's trees and a mountain in the background, some things that are growing, and the pages are always learning, they're curious, and they're getting to know their world still. So this card is inviting you early in your week to get curious, see what you can learn more about, and really look at that closely. So the way he is holding this pentacle up and looking very intently at it, I think it's a good reminder to keep your focus clear on whatever is of interest to you, and have some really clear direction about where you're headed and what it is that you want to learn. And then when we get into Tuesday, we have another page, this time the Page of Swords. So it's interesting to get these two cards back to back, and they're kind of looking at each other in the direction that the figures are facing. On the Page of Swords, we have this person who is looking backwards, kind of looking to their left as they're stepping to the right, and they have a sword held up to the sky. In the swords, we have our thoughts and ideas. So while the Page of Pentacles on Monday might be asking you, what am I interested in learning more about? What do I need to get curious about? With the Page of Swords, we're increasing our knowledge on whatever that foundational idea was. So I think these work really well together. So on Tuesday, you're kind of looking back and thinking about whatever idea, whatever topic you kind of started out the week with. So maybe you have a specific thing that you're trying to research more or learn more about. And so with the Page of Swords, it's kind of taking that in an intellectual level and doing some more research and taking it a little bit further, going a little deeper with those ideas, and kind of stepping forward and looking at the pages, making this kind of forward, slow, graceful movements. Almost looks like they're about to step off of this little hill and move forward. So I'm thinking about the Fool kind of making the leap, even though this is just a really short little hill. But they're still going off into something new and taking those lessons from the Page of Pentacles and then going to the next thing with them. And the next thing that they go to is the Hermit. So on this card, we have a person who is being led forward in the dark by this lamp, and they are taking these very careful steps. And with the Hermit, it's often an invitation to go inward and spend that time in quiet reflection, kind of get away from everyone for a little while. So after accumulating some knowledge and doing some research, then you kind of have to sit with that and think about what you're going to do with it. So don't immediately, we're not seeing the Knight of Wands or even an Ace as our next move after you kind of collect this information. It's the Hermit. So it's time to go inward and think about it and reflect on it and really do some pondering. So far we don't have a whole lot of movement in these first three cards, but a lot of introspection. And so you might ask yourself on Wednesday, how can I find some more time to myself? What do I need to sit with right now and process? And then on Thursday, we have the King of Pentacles. So we've gone very quickly from Page of Pentacles to King. And the kings in the tarot are the more mature, the older archetypes of whatever suit, whatever elements we're dealing with. And so this earth element with the pentacles, the king has the most knowledge about it and the most stable way to work with it. We see him seated on a throne in this card. There's a castle behind, and his clothing is all different kinds of leaves, and there's a lot of plants all around him. So there's some growth that has taken place. In the Page of Pentacles, there's some little tiny flowers on the ground, but now it's like those things have really sprung up and bloomed during the time that the page grew up to be the king. So this feels like whatever idea was starting to form earlier has now kind of grown into something bigger. So the time that was taken out in the Hermit to really sit with the information and to let that light, your inner light, guide you forward as far as what step to take. Now with Thursday, we have a little bit more stability and an idea of where that idea or where that kind of concept is leading you to, because the kings are really strong leaders as well. So kind of taking that forward and letting it lead you, but also not letting it kind of get out of control. Once again, we don't have a knight here. We have a very solid king who's holding this pentacle carefully on his lap and also looking at it. So a lot of attention, careful attention taken to whatever it is that you need to focus on this week. So with the King of Pentacles, you might ask yourself, how can I find more stability and make wise choices as I get into the next part of my week? And then as we continue to move forward with Friday, we have the Hierophant. And this card, we see a figure seated with a few people down below who are they're the ones who are coming to the Hierophant, to this leader for instruction and inspiration. This figure is sometimes seen as a religious leader. It can also be someone who carries on traditions and holds the keys. At the bottom we see two keys, the keys to wisdom and the keys to knowledge. So whether this means seeking out a wise person or being that wise person to yourself, this card is inviting you to continue to find the answers that you're looking for, that you kind of began this week's journey with by tapping into your inner spirituality or your inner wisdom. But you can also find that wise teacher or wise source who's going to take you in the right direction to where you want to go next. So a question you might ask on Friday is, what is my source of inspiration and who can I find answers from to whatever questions are coming up for me? And then on our Saturday, we have the Five of Wands, which is interesting because this feels like a lot of conflicting energy. On this card, we see five figures who are holding wands, and it looks like they're all kind of trying to hit each other with them. There's the idea of kind of going at cross purposes where everyone's got a different wand and they have a different idea of how things should go. So while these previous cards up to this point have had just one figure on each card, this is the first time that we see several people all together, and it's kind of not going well for these people. There's some conflict here. And with wands, we have creativity, the fire energy, and the desire to kind of take something and run with it. But there's some conflict here as far as maybe you against internal forces, your internal conflicts, or it could be an external conflict between you and someone else. or between you and the group on Saturday. So as you've had this time to yourself for introspection throughout the week, now suddenly there's this conflict that's coming up, and just this idea that maybe things aren't going to go quite as smoothly as you expected as you go forward on what you've just spent a lot of time learning about. Now implementing it is not quite so easy. So think about on Saturday, ask yourself, how can I best problem solve, and how can I work with this chaotic energy rather than fighting against it? And then on Sunday, we have the Six of Swords. And on this card, we see two figures. It looks like maybe a mother and a son who are being ferried across the river by another person. Their boat is full of swords that are stabbing through it, and you can kind of see the island maybe that they're headed to off in the distance, but it looks like there's been some kind of challenge, some kind of struggle, and they're having to make an escape, take their swords with them, and start somewhere else, start somewhere new. And seeing this right after the Five of Wands makes me think about the struggle that leads to some kind of escape or some kind of change, and moving on from where you thought you were going and changing direction, heading someplace else. So I think something to think about that day is just, what shift in direction am I having to take, and how can I best work with that? I think about the Six Swords in the boat as being just a possibility for having ideas, but also maybe having them get in the way of what you want to accomplish. Because too many ideas can sink this boat. If the swords are going all the way through it, then the boat's not going to make its way to its destination. So just at the beginning of the week, when we had the Page of Swords, that one idea that's going to carry you forward, whereas having too many cluttering thoughts might get in the way of your progress. So as we're looking back through these cards, so just to recap on what we have for this week, we started out the week with the Page of Pentacles. This curiosity and desire to discover something new, grounded in earth energy and really focused on what it is we want to discover. And taking that from earth into the air with the Page of Swords, having some time to get clarity and to consider the ideas, to do a little research about what you want to do next and get really clear before you take the next step. And then that next step takes us into the Hermit, which is a card of taking those slow inward journeys, being guided by your own inner light, this lantern that he's holding, and getting away from everyone to process whatever comes up and to decide what your next course of action should be. So after these two pages and after the Hermit, we spend some time with the King of Pentacles, a card of stability and grounding, of maturity and strong leadership. So with this card, we have the opportunity to sit carefully and deliberately and to make sure that our decisions are wise and fair. Then we move to the Hierophant, a card of connecting with your inner spirituality, with your inner wisdom, and maybe finding those sources outside of yourself that can provide that information, that can provide some guidance for you. But sometimes with the Hierophant, it's also encouraging us to break with tradition and maybe see things a little differently, step outside of the box when you're trying to problem solve. And then we get to the Five of Wands, this first instance of conflict that comes up in this reading. And the fire kind of going in all different directions, the wands going in all different directions, and having a little bit of trouble integrating these new thoughts and ideas, either with what you already believe and know, or with what other people's expectations may be. So through this conflict, this leads us to the Six of Swords and taking a different path, stepping away, being ferried off in this boat to someplace else. So it'll be interesting to see where your journey takes you throughout the week and how the ideas that are formed early in the week lead to changes later on. And just making sure that you keep your eye throughout the week on whatever it was that Page of Pentacles represents to you. Remembering to spend some time quietly reflecting and getting curious about the ideas that come up. Finding your source of stability and your source of inspiration, and working wisely through conflicts that arise so that you can make the right step, the right path forward for yourself, and get to where it is that you're meant to be.